Okay, new business G. In your packet, you had a draft resolution that Eric put together on the search committee for our recommendations to take a look at whatever areas are available for the municipal building and compare them to the selected site already. Thank you. So from
Kathy, is there everybody talk while you're handing that out?
Oh, yeah,
Okay, no, I just
absolutely.
didn't wanna interrupt you. So, at the last meeting, the board discussed, setting up a search committee for alternative, properties to the Evans Road tract. It was pointed out that there's a section of the ordinance that we have to comply with, of our ordinance, excuse me, that we have to comply with, to have board members on that committee. And an exception that's in our code basically says if the committees is established by either or state law, township ordinance, or township resolution, that board members can sit on that committee. So as it was discussed last month, there was a desire that board members sit on that committee, so we drafted up a resolution so that we are in compliance with our own code. Section 1 of what we drafted is that it is a temporary committee, just for the purpose of doing this property search. We then identified express goals of the committee would be to find an alternative or alternative plural sites to the Evans Road tract, and that we have a decision on or before July 31st. If that committee would need more time than July 31st, the board could review the action to that date and extend that if it's justified. There is actually two alternatives for, as this is written right now, for the number of individuals sitting on that committee. The first is that there are two commissioners only. If those commissioners wanted more than just themselves to be on that committee, it would then go to 7 members with the 2 commissioners plus 1 member of the public appointed by each commissioner. Then it goes into some other dates and timelines for the committee to take action, and then it goes into some property criteria to consider and it's a starting point for the committee, not that this is the only criteria, but the committee should use these as starting points and could add to them over time, and those are cost, location, size, accessibility, disturbance to residents, ability to expand the facility in the future, availability of the property itself, road frontage and access, and the site's ability to incorporate the site into the recreational planning. It then directs the committee to have public meetings, to take public comment, to review the alternative sites. At the meeting last month, without this resolution, there was appointments made, and I believe the committee has already started to take some steps to research available properties, and I think that's what Kathy just handed out. So we can talk about, I guess, either what Kathy handed out or the resolution.
Well, I'll start. Dave and I were appointed to the committee. Sorry. Dave and I were appointed to the committee. And to show that we were taking it very seriously, we almost immediately set up meetings with Michelle, and then we set up meetings with a civil engineer. After having worked with Michelle and Dave and I, we worked together to identify properties that we thought could fit some of this criteria. I have to say, in a very short period of time, we were able to visit these properties with the engineer, and he then developed a very good report. I was saying it contained a lot more than I thought. Honestly, I thought it contained a lot more than what we were expecting in such a short period of time, but it is because the gentleman knows the township and a lot of the issues that go on in the township. So, actually Dave and I were waiting to hear the report to see exactly how we wanted to proceed with this committee. And I wasn't aware that we were gonna do a resolution until last week, so I had some time to discuss with Dave and with the solicitors, because we didn't wanna put the parameters in yet to how we wanted the committee to run, but until we saw the report. Now, we did have our own ideas of how we wanted to run this committee, because we were told in the beginning this was our committee to run. Agreed? Okay. When the resolution came back, there were some things in there that did not come from Dave and I. And the one thing is, number one, July 31st, we can't do that. That's an impossible deadline to meet, especially if we're gonna have two public meetings, at least two public meetings. The section number 3, designation of members and committee organization. Dave and I, from the start, agreed, we do not want to be voting members on this committee, because I don't want to set a precedent for a resolution that's already in place, because then I can see just this being abused for years to come. Well, we're gonna set up a special committee so we can have 2 commissioners on it. No, I don't wanna do that. At our discretion, and we started an application form that hasn't been completed yet. We wanted people to apply for this, and we wanted people with an open mind. We really did. I mean, I know there's a lot of discussion about this and a lot of bad feelings, but we were going to try to get people who had open minds as to looking at the initial report, taking them to the sites, discussing and seeing what other information we still needed to help them make their decision. Okay? So we were going to go through the applications ourselves with Michelle, because this was supposed to be our committee. After we saw the report, we had no problem with the other property requirements, because a lot of that is covered in there, which I said was a lot more than we had expected. So, as I understand, this is a draft of a solution. So what I am asking the board tonight is, our big issue is that Dave and I do not want to be voting members in this committee. We don't want to set a precedent for this. That, and that we get to pick 3 people, because we're being boxed in to something that we do not feel comfortable with. And I want everybody to understand our point of view. Any comments for me? No? Okay.
I guess I'm a little confused, and first of all, I saw this study a couple days ago, and I compliment the engineer or the work that went into at least looking at what we have, and I liked what I read in here. It was very good. But this committee was, I'm not sure if committee is the right word, but whatever. This committee was put together based on what Dave had said in public meetings and in the newspaper, that you want 2 commissioners and up to 5 residents. I thought I thought that's what this is giving. We're giving you what you want, and I don't understand why you're feeling boxed in. You have a couple options here. If you wanna just, well, you have a couple options. There are no conditions on this resolution, including cost, and I am fully confident that both of you are very good at controlling cost and always have been. But, again, you have 7 properties on here, or 6. I like what I read, because this is telling me where the best property is. However, you wanna go through the motions, that's great, but I think that people, this was presented to us because a property became available, or became available just a few months ago that was not available during the initial site, and I thought we should at least run down that property, because while I have my concerns with that property and the conditions that we may take ownership of that property, we have to run that down, and Dave and I had a good discussion about that, and I think it's a good idea, and while we were talking, Dave, and I had recommended looking at another property if you felt it was good to do it, and I see you did that, I think, but, we're giving you what you want, so I don't know what the complaint is at this point.
Well, I think I can answer that.
Thanks.
Originally, when this was set up, Kathy and I were to pick everybody on the committee, the mounted a number of people from the public that sits on this. Hands off, 100%, we run everything, we set the parameters, we make all the decisions, we do the timeline, and then this past week, and Eric, I sat down, the first meeting I had, I asked you if it was hands off, didn't I?
I don't recall, but.
You don't recall that. Michelle, can I ask you a tough question? You were not at that meeting, but you were in meetings when I went over this with Eric. Just to make sure, 100% Kathy and I in control of this committee and makes all decisions. What was the answer?
The answer was that was the understanding from the previous meeting.
Right, so, this is, you wanted to know why, Don? That's horrible. This committee, it's not even formed yet, and it's completely different than what was presented to us and told how we were gonna run this committee.
Well, you are running, you are running this.
No, if we pick the residents, Don, everyone on this board picks somebody then, okay? It was never agreed to that way, Don. You and I had some good conversation. It was never agreed to that way, never.
Dave, I may concede my pick to whoever you want, but I would like to make sure if property that the developers are offering us,
Mhm.
we get somebody that lives down there on this committee, cause it's gonna impact them greatly. That's the only condition I would like to do. If we don't, well, actually, they have to be on the committee because it's on the list.
Yeah.
If we haven't picked, and I'm not sure what are you deciding on the committee? What's the decision
Well, we
that
wanted
you
to
can't
see
vote
it.
on?
We wanted to see the report back. And we were gonna, leaning towards, we were all working together, 3 residents on this committee.
There's a lot of feedback.
And that's what we were told we could do originally. That's, I didn't want to do it, I was told I could do it originally. That's all.
Can I ask you a
Okay.
question, Eric? If we recuse ourselves as voting members of this committee, do we actually need a resolution?
No.
There you go. That's what I was trying to skirt around. We don't wanna be voting members on it. We don't need a resolution. We don't need to set a precedent of having other commissioners on special committees. I don't wanna do that. I just don't. I think it's a very bad idea. And that is what we really want. We don't wanna be voting, we wanna be the facilitators. We wanna get the people the information, we wanna set the agenda up for them, we wanna walk them through the properties. I mean, actually, if you go by what this is, what this report says, it's already picked a place.
I know it did.
It picked a place. And you may not be aware, but there's another property that's becoming available to us.
Well,
And, well, we need time to talk to these people. And the committee should also have time to talk to these people who are offering us properties. That's how I feel this committee should run. You know, I mean, I can't take back what already happened. But we are spending too much money. This lawsuit, as you know, can go on for years.
Which one?
About small.
Could.
And you will,
It could, but it's
Really?
probably not going to.
oh, see, and you can disagree with me, but I highly disagree with that. You just don't know how important this issue is of open space and preserving and the environment. This is a hot button issue right now. And do you wanna leave it to a court to decide what we're gonna do? You never know who you're gonna get as a judge. Do we wanna leave it to, how much more money do we wanna spend on this?
we're not the ones suing, we're getting sued. We have
And
to
we- because-
respond to it, okay?
Yes, we have to respond to it, but we could put an end to it,
On what, on how?
choosing another spot.
There's not a spot on this, there's not a spot on this site that I think is viable based on this report. Now, you're saying there may be other sites coming online. Remember, this site was chosen 3 years ago or so. And the metrics for choosing the site, somebody did a good job, okay?
I'm not saying that that is a bad spot. I have said from the very beginning, we didn't vet it to the public. That was my problem with the whole resolution that started this. That's the problem, and I don't think anybody really understands that. I don't think you understand it. That is why everybody got so angry. We didn't make our case to the public.
Correct, but, and this is something, I will say I'm a little weak on the argument, but this is not a democracy. This is we represent the public. A
Right.
democracy gets us to these seats, and then we make the decisions for the public. We just made,
Wait a minute, the board is supposed to work with.
Not out of order.
we take feedback from the public, but we represent the public. We represent the taxpayers. I'm sorry if you can't hear me. We represent the taxpayers. Everybody says, well, what are we gonna do? Create an app so every vote we take on this, everybody in the township can go? This site was selected and it was well done. These other sites, some of them, there's just no way. One's too small. Heather Place, it looks like that's where you're trying to go to, but that's also permanently protected open space. The whole
Don,
thing
we're
is-
not trying to go anywhere, we want the public to make the decisions here, not us.
And the
Well,
public will,
Simple.
the public would have had input had we had a public meeting,
Of course, well,
but we didn't.
Don, I
Okay.
just wanna make sure all the board members, don't mention the property addresses that are on this.
Yes.
Only because that's
I know.
one thing, I just wanna warn everybody, before somebody does it, is that if we start mentioning property addresses that we're considering, the price could double, triple, or something like it. Obviously, you can mention the two that we own, which you already did, which is
yeah,
Evans Tract and Heather Place, but don't mention addresses at all.
I'm aware, I'm sure this document's out there anyways, but, what do you want? You can run the committee and just abstain from the vote. You're gonna be voting as a commissioner anyways. I don't,
Exactly, that's the whole point, Don. We will be voting as commissioners. Until then, let the public make the decisions.
We should not have two votes on one issue. And that's where you're putting us. You're putting us on a committee where we're gonna vote to pick the place, and then we're gonna come as commissioners and vote to solidify the place. I don't think anybody here, and that's why we passed, or that's why that resolution was passed, so no commissioner has two votes on any issue. I think that's fair. I think that was a wise decision. So let's just stick with that, give us non-voting members, non-voting participants, facilitators, and let us go through the motions of an application and pick 3 people.
is this getting, and I was not on this committee, is this getting set up like the sewer sale committee? Where two people are making recommendations on what to do? I mean, is this essentially similar?
Well, no, not really. The township manager and Trace, and myself are on the sewer. Okay, and I was just asked to be on it by Trace. This committee that we're talking about, I was asked by Trace to head this. With absolutely a clean slate to make all the decisions.
Dave, I don't think we said that. I think we had in the meeting, we asked to make sure it was independent. We asked the solicitor to draw up the parameters and.
I went to the solicitor, Trace.
Yeah, we did.
I made an appointment, went to the solicitor, but he doesn't remember. But Michelle remembers.
Well, I do remember, I don't remember the topic you just spoke of, and here's why I don't remember it the way you're remembering it. Is that at that meeting, the two of you wanted a meeting, or a committee with just the two of you. I put that option in here. The end of the last meeting, we had an executive session. What came out of that executive session was that the two of you be on it and one member appointed by each commissioner, so that's why that's in it, that's why
I never agreed to that.
you didn't agree to it, it was discussed at the executive session, the two of you left early. You left the executive session while I was in session, so you didn't hear that, that's why, when I told you I don't recall, I don't think I would have said that, knowing what was in the executive session, knowing what our discussion was, that it would be unfettered discretion to set it up and run it the way you
Well,
wanted.
You answered those questions in front of the township manager. Meeting after, not that.
And
That's correct.
so once you're running the meetings, I believe it will be unfettered, however, the setup of the meeting, so maybe the intent of your question and my answer didn't jive, but I think once you start running the meetings, they're unfettered, you run them the way you want them, with a goal, and the other thing that came up, after the last executive session, or the last meeting, was that, you requested 6 months to have this, and I gave you feedback that 6 months is way too long. You have some properties that are available right now, but
That
if
is
you
correct.
wait 6 months, so that's why I came up with July 31st. I hear you that July 31st is too quick. I think that's something we should discuss, and if we need a date that's longer, that's what the board needs to discuss.
All right, but then let's just write this up simply, there'll be, we're making the decisions on this committee, just like we talked about. I mean, if we started this committee, we've worked on this committee for weeks now, under those circumstances, that's what we thought. Is that correct, Michelle?
Yeah, I will say that, and I know I had a conversation with Teresa, I put a lot of time into this with Kathy and Dave over the last 2 weeks. And I was going forth on the pretense that we were doing what we were supposed to be doing. And I did clarify that, with 2 commissioners, I'm not gonna say who they are. And I did in fact send an email to Eric, asking that, just to clarify, only because this is not the only thing I have on my plate, obviously. And I was spending a lot of time, and I also wanted to make sure that I was okay moving forward with authorizing, the engineer to do the work, because I signed a quote for him to prepare that report based on the information we gave him. I never did get a response from you, Eric, but because I had confirmed with 2 other commissioners that I was proceeding as I thought I was supposed to be proceeding. So,
And you were,
it's my understanding I was, yes.
well,
So we've had a lot of changes this last few days then.
Well, okay, and
Yeah, okay.
you can run the date, I think that's a little tight, 31st. But, again, I just wanna make my point, please understand this. During the campaign, commissioners were asked questions, what they like, and I'm reading it, I'm literally reading an article quoting you, and you said this in the meetings, you want to form a committee of two commissioners and up to 3 residents to choose 3 or 4 properties. I think that's what this is giving you, that's it, I mean, what is,
basically it is.
okay, well.
But we didn't
But
say
then
if we
who's
wanted to be
picking the-
voting or non-voting
Yeah, who's
members.
picking the people? It's simple, we just laid it on the table, what we wanted, and what we were told is the way it was gonna be. Simple. Either it's that way, or I can't be a part of something that's changed like that. We're changing the rules as the game goes on.
Picking the people, is that what we're down to, is who's gonna pick the
Oh,
people?
no, I don't wanna vote.
We don't wanna
We
vote,
wanna have control of how many people and who we pick.
we want 3
We were
people,
told.
and we wanna go through a process with Michelle, and we'll have the solicitors there of who we pick. I don't wanna have any meetings without solicitors, I really don't. Because you guys, with the people that we pick, or whatever, we need their guidance, okay? To make sure we're asking the right questions and everything, that's what we need them for. And, it eventually is all gonna come to the Board of Commissioners, their recommendations. So I don't understand what the problem is, cause it's eventually gonna come to you guys. You guys, us included,
Correct.
right?
And as a solicitor, just forewarned us not to mention the properties, because they maybe have to be purchased. I think that's a good warning.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Listen, we started, well, you guys started this project 4 years ago. I think in 2019, we got a quote for about 5.5 million. It's probably more towards 7 now. Okay, because of this crazy inflation, I don't wanna be spending any more money on property.
Can you let the committee make that decision? I think when they read this report, it's spelled out for them. I mean, for me, I had an alternate property in mind, I did. I really liked a certain property. After talking through it with Al, I thought I had to let it go. Because it wasn't the best spot. It simply wasn't the best spot, so, you know, I'm not gonna cry over it. I'm just saying, I moved on, and then when I saw the report, I thought, okay,
I'm just
it
saying,
is what it is.
if we don't pick that property, which I think I know which one you're talking about, then we have to buy something. And, you know, my gosh, the cost of real estate these days, I don't even know what,
So what alternative are you giving us?
Getting a little ahead of herself here.
Yeah, you're getting ahead,
Let's-
you're not even letting the committee do its work.
I'm
Let's
saying,
work out the parameters.
oh, I'm
here, okay?
sensing a filibuster here, and I just feel like they're gonna keep delaying this. We have a property, well, actually, I'm sorry, the resolution says that we already have the property. If you can present us something equal or better, I'm all for it, okay? And Dave, I told you that, but if I gotta drop $700,000 on the property, oh my gosh, and I gotta tell these people, we may be going back into debt, no, yeah, I don't think so.
How much debt are we gonna go into if we keep this lawsuit going?
Yeah,
Do you
how
ever-
are we
do you-
getting to this subject when we're just trying to get parameters
Yeah, we're just trying to get parameters for a committee.
that we
Let the
were
committee
promised
do its
for a
work.
committee? We've been so off track.
Let's talk about the resolution real quick. So creation of a temporary committee, that's what we're doing, we have a date we had discussed. Express, goals of the committee, we have that all listed there as well, what the intent is. There's discussion about the 31st of July. And then we go into section 3, which actually goes through how these things were structured, given that, and I wasn't aware of the meetings you guys had set up, that you planned, I guess with Michelle on these things, and you discussed how these, I guess this is where you came up with the parameters of the design on section 3, which is simply what we discussed before was the 2 commissioners, or total of 7 members with 2 commissioners plus a 5 selected by the 1 per commissioner. That's the parameters that I understood after reading through this thing and seeing how it was laid out. I think that's what, when we actually discussed setting up this committee, when we all met, with all the commissioners there, when we talked about this, how to structure it, it was to have a solicitor draft up what he thought was the most equitable way to present this, to have an independent body look at how we're gonna present it. And I think when we did have a comment that Don brought up, that this is exactly, Dave, what you suggested when we, not only had several meetings, but also, I think you made comments to Mercury as well on this. So that's just
Any
say,
comments to Mercury?
yeah.
The committee, and
Committee.
you know what Dave said, a committee with 2 commissioners and 3 residents. We never said if we wanted to be voting members of the committee. And there's a reason for that, as I've explored, we don't need a resolution if we're not voting members. We're not setting a precedent for other commissioners to sit on committees,
Well,
okay?
we're also establishing parameters around that to give guidance to the committee. It is not your committee, it is the board's committee. And we're asking the committee to go forward and see if there are any options besides what we've already picked with. This gives an opening to what you guys had suggested for your solution, which is a solution to the process, not necessarily the actual pick.
Okay,
So
so,
we have on the back page here, just continuing on section 3, with appointing both, and that's when I appointed Dave as chairman, Kathy, because you guys had the most interest in this, to go forward with that. That's where that first paragraph goes. And it also has the township manager as non-voting, she's acting as administrator, as is the solicitor, as well. And then we go into the property requirements, which has the parameters that are listed.